Tonight on The Political Game, we take a look at how much work our politicians really do and the sacrifices they have to make to be successful.
My number one job is actually a parent. I try and roll this job, being an MP, around my parental duties.
We'll enter the Holy of Holies, the Speaker's office, and his private apartment, where foreign dignitaries, party leaders, and New Zealand's business elite are entertained.
The first interesting thing is the desk itself, which, if you read the plaque, was the desk of Prime Minister Dick Seddon and his cabinet.
We'll lift the lid on some of the secrets of the journalists who report the spin and scandals of politics.
If you call him Winston, you'll get the shot of death from his eyes.
And we'll see just how much disruption that everyone has had to endure as Parliament's had a necessary and overdue facelift.
And we do end up having to deal with a lot of complaints, issues, and coming up with solutions, hopefully most of the time.
New Zealand's Parliament is like a small self-contained village or suburb within the Wellington Central Business District. It's run by this man, and right now, like so many other Kiwi property owners, he's been worried about a leaky building.
My responsibility is, as the landlord of the parliamentary complex, is to make sure that the buildings are maintained. So a major project like this, Parliamentary Service will report to me that the building needs substantial repair. I will go into bat for Parliamentary Service to get the money from the Minister of Finance so that we have a budget and the resources then to undertake the repair.
There's been a multi-million-dollar refurbishment of the main parliamentary building, which has been going on for almost 2 years now. And it's been a headache for the Parliamentary Services Buildings Manager and the contractors, a headache which they've tried not to inflict on the legislators and the people working in Parliament.
We try to work very closely with the members of Parliament and the parliamentary support staff that are in the building, but unfortunately there is quite a bit of disruption and we do end up having to deal with a lot of complaints, issues, and coming up with solutions, hopefully most of the time.
For David Carter's part, he's just glad to be able to see past the tarpaulins, which have blocked the view, and the daylight coming into his office.
Even as we film today, the scaffolding is coming down and I'm going to be delighted because I get my view back outside onto the lovely lawn of Parliament.
David Carter's position as Parliament's Speaker is unique. His suite of rooms is steeped in history and tradition.
The office itself, well, a lot of people come in and say it's very Westministerial. The panelling is Canadian maple, presented from the Canadian government to New Zealand, I'd be guessing, but about 100 years ago. The wigs over here, of course, are now not used, but they still remain there as a symbol of the office. The last time I recall a wig being regularly used by a speaker was Speaker Jonathan Hunt, which takes us back to the very early 2000s. I don't want to wear a wig. I've never worn the wig. I think we've moved past those days. They're apparently very itchy, and I suspect they don't make hearing some of the interjections any easier with those flappy things around your ears. Let me take you through the rest of the Speaker's apartment. So the office itself, so 3 support staff, so it's not a big office. My office, which you've now seen, and then the Speaker's apartment.
And as the landlord, he's the only politician who can actually live on the premises if he chooses to do so.
So a couple of bedrooms which have not been used now since, I think, Jonathan Hunt in early 2000 was the last person who actually lived in the apartment. But as we proceed down, quite a substantial entertaining area that's used a lot. So the lounge itself would be used maybe once or twice during the day for visiting delegations. We'd use it in the evening for cocktail parties, entertaining, and of course a very lovely dining room, which was used last night. We had 14 people sitting here for a formal dinner last night, 12 selected business leaders from around New Zealand having the opportunity to meet with the Prime Minister and the leader of the Māori Party. We'll do a similar occasion later in the year. We'll have the opportunity then for those selected guests to meet with the Leader of the Opposition. So it's quite apolitical, but an opportunity for these business leaders to get very, very close in an intimate sense, in a confidential sense, to the political leaders of this country.
Mr. Speaker is not just the ceremonial figurehead. Each day he and the Clerk of the House meet to critique the handling of parliamentary business on the previous sitting day.
Yep. And so there's two options. There's the one you mentioned, which is
359.
Yep, saying that a member's misled the House. The other thing is that though, if you think someone's misled the House deliberately, then you raise a matter of privilege by writing to you. It's not something to deal with on the floor of the House.
Then they discuss how the Speaker will oversee today's question time and the debates and the reading of bills which may eventually become new laws.
Parties must submit their questions by, I think it's 10:30, and then there's a period of time whereby the Office of the Clerk checks the questions to see that they meet the rules. The questions then presented to me about an hour later, at 11:30, standard meeting, I go through them. Can tell today I suspect that Winston Peters won't be there, so that puts a different dynamic on the way question time will go. Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
You should have had the health ones, they were easier, John.
Order. We'll just have the supplementary presentation of the word.
In the chamber, Mr. Speaker is very much centre stage and in charge.
Order. I don't want to start by asking members to leave the chamber. But when I'm on my feet, I expect silence from all members.
He's the referee in this clash of political teams, but sometimes has to become a ringmaster when the proceedings in the chamber threaten to turn into a circus.
Point of order,
Mr. Speaker, you are the judge of how a question should be put. You have the authority to make that decision, not some illiterate like the Prime Minister.
I'm pleased that the member acknowledges that I'm the judge of such issues. And on this occasion, the question I'm generously allowing, and now the Prime Minister can answer it.
Mr. Speaker, I say to the member, if he hangs around long enough in question time today, we'll be able to see just how good the Speaker is.
Order.
No, John boy.
Order. Would the Prime Minister please... Order. Would the Prime Minister now ask the question originally asked?
Okay, I'll ask myself a question, then I'll answer it, Mr. Speaker.
The temperature in this place can change in an instant. So you can have a day when there's consensus rules, there's not a lot of tension, and within minutes an issue can occur that will change that.
What assurances has he sought from Judith Collins that she'll stop misusing her position to malign public servants and line her husband's pockets?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I take offence from that question.
My job's to chair the session, let everybody have a reasonably fair go. They must abide by the rules. If the member wants to break into an interjection and have a chat halfway through giving a question, that's what will happen.
Mr. Carter's job is to see parliamentary business runs properly and manage 120 temperamental people who like taking potshots at each other across the arena.
It's a really silly question, I'm not going to...
Please ask him to act responsibly and answer the questions he's being asked.
Order.
He must persuade and sometimes coerce them to coexist, cohabit and even cooperate as they deal with the business of running New Zealand.
What assurances has he sought from Judith?
Assertions in there that have not...
New Zealand are the parents who haven't looked after.
Leaking and moulding and making out...
Honourable Bill English on behalf... Order! And with Prime Minister, when I'm on my feet calling for order, that's no excuse for the Prime Minister to interject.
There is no other workplace in New Zealand like Parliament. And uniquely, everyone we met working there was incredibly proud and felt privileged to be part of the democratic machinery, be they politician, public servant, porter or postal delivery clerk. They radiated a certain confidence that's best summed up by the Speaker, David Carter.
People are proud to work here. It's unique. There's a huge tradition about it. It's the powerhouse of New Zealand. It's where decisions are actually made, and those decisions affect every New Zealander. Quite what drives this absolute admiration for the place, I don't know, but it exists throughout the whole of the complex, regardless of the job they're doing. It is a great privilege to have the opportunity to work in this building.
But as we explored the inner workings of New Zealand's Parliament, there was one theme which kept cropping up again and again. In the wider community, there prevails a cynical attitude to politics and its practitioners. Many look at the cost of Parliament, the salaries of the politicians and the perks they enjoy, and they assume it's a cushy job.
Too much talking, not enough action.
I don't think they're using their power responsibly.
Few of those we asked had anything much good to say about their elected representatives.
I don't have much faith in our politicians, be them whatever colour they come in, green, brown, red.
They always say it's a Pākehā thing.
They're just in it for themselves, in it for the money.
It seems even fewer are willing to trust the politicians. In the latest poll, only 8% of those surveyed believe politicians to be trustworthy. But when it comes to asking who is responsible for their low esteem, more than a few of the politicians shift the blame from themselves to the journalists who report their daily doings.
To collect a wide range of information and share it with the US, Canada, Australia and the UK.
It's an interesting argument. Are the politicians simply shooting the messenger, or does the fault lie with the media?
It's an interesting relationship between politicians and political journalists, because in a lot of cases you know each other quite well, and in some cases you might already be friends with people or you become friends with people, but you never stop that getting in the way of your story, you know, and they don't ever let that get in the way of their job either. You know, there's sort of a mutual understanding about where that line is.
To meet deadlines and hold the attention of their audiences, complex stories are routinely compressed and simplified.
Sometimes it can be, particularly when things are tense, if someone's resigning or there's a big story, it can get a bit scrappy. Everyone wants the best shots, everyone wants the best mic placement, they want to get the best audio. So at the end of the day, everyone's got a job to do.
In their scramble to get the best shots and sound grabs, often what we see is a sort of unruly media ruck.
There's been some great stories over the years about people who've, you know, accidentally been in the wrong place at the wrong time and accidentally clonked the Prime Minister with a microphone or something like that. I confess I did it to Helen Clark about 6 or 7 years ago. Not my most shining moment.
One tip that got told to me when I first came to Parliament: if you're a minister, it's always Minister, and then you start your question. And if it's an MP, it's okay to call them by their first name. But when it comes to Winston Peters, who isn't a minister, but you must always refer to him as Mr. Peters. If you call him Winston, you will get the shot of death from his eyes.
Politics and news never stops, really. And politics is funny because you always think nothing stranger than this will happen, and then it does. So, you know, the Prime Minister pulling a ponytail, Stephen Joyce getting a dildo thrown at him. Every time something happens, you think, oh, there's no way politics could get weirder than this, and then it does.
The news hounds hunt like a pack, catching their prey on the hoof, trapping them behind a barrier of cameras and microphones.
Into the hands of serial violent offenders and particularly gangs.
It's a situation that most of us have come to accept. We look for heroes or villains, only to discover they usually match our own political beliefs and biases. For the journalists of the Press Gallery, the job is demanding and getting harder.
Parliament's got 121 MPs, 18 select committees. It does a lot of business, And in the old days, you know, an office would have probably had half a dozen journos doing it. Herald's got 6. To do the place justice, the more hands at the pump, the better. But that's just the way modern radio's got, particularly commercial radio. You just do the best you can with what you've got.
The remaining Press Gallery now has to be multi-skilled, producing written copy for newspaper stories and websites. They record sound for radio voice reports and often also shoot video footage for TV, websites and social media. Journalism is no longer a well-paid career, so most of the gallery do their job because they love politics and the excitement of being close to the action.
We're going up to the Press Gallery now. Most media organisations, or the mainstream media organisations, have their offices up in here. That's Jeff, who is a bit of a gallery mascot. There's a lot of dinosaurs around this building. That one's a lot more fun than others. Probably the most interesting thing about the Press Gallery is the years of photos. It's amazing how long it takes before there's any woman in the Press Gallery. Years and years and years of just men. And this is the TVNZ office. Most offices don't tend to be that tidy though, so don't film anything too close, but this is very representative of a media's office. Include the shoes, you can tell that's my desk, and the jackets. Raincoats, jackets, everything you need. When you go up in the press gallery up above Parliament, there's rules about what you wear, so men have to wear jackets, no jeans allowed, no singlets, so we are supposed to be dressed to a certain standard when we go up there and watch Question Time or any other proceedings in the House. It kind of helps being much shorter than everyone else because I can duck in and get in there, so that helps a lot. But sometimes we do end up squatting underneath a camera to get in there.
People often ask why ordinary, otherwise sane individuals run for Parliament and subject themselves to media scrutiny and the rough and tumble of politics.
My first time in Parliament was as a journalist for TVNZ, so I worked in the press gallery. It wasn't something that I thought about ever getting into political journalism and TV, but I came over here, and once you get here, you get the bug, and you absolutely love it because there's lots of drama here. So then to make the jump over from a journalist to a staffer and then an MP is very interesting because you can see things from different perspectives.
As we filmed this series in Parliament, every member we spoke to, we discovered, had signed up for the job with the sincere belief that they could improve life in New Zealand by making a positive contribution through politics.
All MPs are here, well, I'd like to think all MPs are here because we want to make New Zealand a better place. When we leave, whether it's, we're only here for 3 years or 6 years or 9 or whatever, that we've contributed to making New Zealand a better place for all New Zealanders.
Supplementary question, Kelvin Davis. Order.
What does...
Order. 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 The interjections from both sides must cease to allow Kelvin Davis to ask a supplementary question.
Even though in the House, we're yelling and yahooing at each other, the fact is that you've got to respect the fact that people are there and everyone's just trying to do what they think is best for the country.
But that said, those outsiders who don't know how Parliament works look at the number of days each year that Parliament sits. They see the pay rates of politicians and the fact that they seem to be able to travel a lot at taxpayers' expense, and they come up to the conclusion that it is a cushy job.
God, I'm like what am I gonna do? I'm gonna scoff a sandwich on the way over. Oh no, have I got a few minutes, Jack? I've got 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
In fact, nothing could be further from the truth.
Lunch. Peanuts.
All right, so yeah.
As our cameras moved around the Parliament and followed politicians throughout their working days, we found that they actually do an incredible amount of work and notch up some impressively long hours doing it. Take Meka Whaitiri. She's the Labour member for Ikaroa Rāwhiti, the huge Māori electorate which covers the east coast of the North Island, stretching from the northern outskirts of Wellington all the way up the East Cape. So big is her electorate that she has 3 satellite electoral offices at Wainuiomata, Hastings and Gisborne, and she visits these when the House isn't sitting to meet her constituents and hear their concerns firsthand.
We're here right here in Gisborne. We're at the protest of the Tūranganuiākiwa consultation hui on Te Turu Whenua. I want to hear from the people themselves, so I want to make sure that whenever I stand up on an issue that's important, not just to the people of Ikaroa Rāwhiti, but throughout the country, that my mandate is what the people are saying. And so far, I'm probably in unison with the cause from many of the Māori landowners in this area.
Most historical treaty settlements that have occurred to date, hardly any of that land has come back as Maori freehold land or Maori land.
Just one point and one question. And let's just, sorry, those who don't know me, Meka Whaitiri, he uri ahau o Tūranganuiākiwa, o whakaata nai tamaniri kia tanga mahaki, and in my spare time I'm your member in Parliament. My number one job is actually a parent, and then I try and roll this job, being an MP, around my parental duties. I'm just thankful that they're both, one's 18, one's 19, so they're kind of adults, but when you're a mother, doesn't matter how old your kid is, they're still your babies.
Meka Whaitiri is a rural woman with a farming and shearing background, so she knows what hard work is. While Parliament's in session, she lives out of a suitcase and her base is a hotel room just a short walk from Parliament.
I wake up sometimes and go, where the heck am I? because apart from Parliament, where I'm generally here for 2 nights, when I'm out in the electorate, I'm never in one place more than 2 nights. So it's 1 night here, 1 night here, 1 night here, simply because the electorate's too big.
Each day she rises with the birds and heads off for her daily run.
You know, for the years I've been down here, I used to do the sea run, which was because I'm a coastie girl. But this year I like to change it up, and so now I'm going in to get a good dose of oxygen, which is through the botanical gardens. Coming to a place like this can only help replenish your source. But it's also a place where I do a lot of thinking, do a lot of reflection, try and centre myself, ready for another day. I always had a plan coming into this role. I said at the night I won the by-election in 2013, I would only do this job for 10 years because it's too hard in the sense of on the body, and also it was a challenge to myself to be effective and give myself enough time to try and be effective. If you're not, then maybe you're not the right people to represent this constituency of Ikurawhiti, and I'm okay about that. As soon as you start thinking the job needs you, it's probably time to move on.
On the other side of the chamber is another Māori MP, National List member Jo Hayes. Not having an electorate seat means she has a roving brief throughout the country, but no need to run electoral offices spread across any region. Still, she has to divide her time between her job in Wellington and her family's sheep and cattle farm at Apiti in the Manawatu.
So our property is 800 acres and we're just sheep and beef.
In Parliament, she's a useful voice for the people living and working up here in an isolated rural area in the foothills of the Ruahine Ranges.
How are you, Scotty? Good. I know.
Running the farm is a full-time job for Pat Hayes.
To have somebody that's grassroots and that she's very aware of what challenges we face, so to have a voice in Parliament is a huge help.
And sometimes I take it with me to work and have a talk to some of the people in the Primary Production Select Committee, and especially around the areas of sheep and beef, so giving sheep and beef a bit of a voice.
Jo's always had fairly strong political views, and she's always been on boards, and whether it be play centre or board of trustees.
When she's at home, if we haven't seen each other for a while, she sort of tells me about how her week's gone, and I'll be telling her what I've been up to.
And it's quite good actually to have Pat, when I walk through the door and that he'll ask me questions, or when I ring him every night, he'll talk to me about certain things that are happening. We had a discussion last week. He said he was right. I said I was the last speaker, so I must have been right.
Yeah, there was a dispute, and I did dig my toes in, so I wasn't backing down, so things were quiet for a wee while, and but then she broke the silence by saying, I'm still right.
My husband and I have been farming for over 30 years. When we first met and that we talked about what our dreams were, and my dream actually wasn't to be a parliamentarian, actually. It was to influence our decisions on policy. That's why I wanted to come, and I kind of worked my way through that. When I first went to work, I worked in a number of corporate positions, and at night sometimes I would come home with my earrings and makeup on and into a set of overalls and helping to calve a cow at night. So it's not an unusual thing for me to walk straight out of my heels and straight into gumboots and straight on the farm. It's good, it grounds me, I think. And people go, oh, to change you being a politician. I don't think so. I think the sheep, the cattle, the dogs and everybody else, and my husband will keep me pretty much grounded.
When she gets home, Jo catches up on the undone chores that go with being a homemaker, a wife and a mother.
So I'm heading to Nepal tomorrow for a conference, and so when I get home I try to clean up the dogs. These are all dog blankets because he sleeps in the lounge during the days, and so I try to clean them up because it gets a bit smelly.
It's a measure of the hectic pace of political life that just hours after we filmed these scenes on the farm, Jo was packing her bags and heading off on an official mission to Nepal. From Wellington to Apathy to Kathmandu and back again in the space of a week. That's the life of a politician, and they all have to do it, and their families must always take a back seat as they play the political game.